Hello and welcome back once again to my channel. So I feel like it's been a bit since I've done just a straight up geek video, so yeah, figure why not do that. So gonna talk about some of my favorite non-mutant Marvel heroes. So right off the bat, Ms. Marvel, Kamala Khan. She's amazing. She's just like she's one of the best. She's one of the best superheroes ever, but certainly one of the best created in recent years. Uh, Created by Sana Amanat, editor Sana Amanat, writer G. Willow Wilson, and designed by Jamie McKelvey. Although Adrian Alphona was the sort of the main artist for the series. There were a bunch of artists who worked on that book. But, yeah, the first volume, No Normal, by Wilson and Alphona, it is about as close to perfect a superhero origin story can get, honestly. Like, it just is a phenomenal bit of modern superhero work that feels absolutely timeless. Uh, and I mean, beyond that, Ms. Marvel is just like a really interesting character. The fact that she's a superhero fangirl is really helps the reader to relate to her. Her Muslim faith gives her a little bit of a little bit of difference from just about any other superhero out there. Not that there aren't superheroes whose religion isn't important to them. Daredevil. But yeah, it's cool getting another superhero whose religion is integral to the to who they are. And even more interesting to get one who's a Muslim. She's got a great supporting cast. It's one of the best supporting casts in modern superhero comics, honestly. Great design, great visual design. Um, Wilson used the book to really explore some really interesting um, themes and touch on history as well. And Ms. Marvel's just Kamala Khan is just such a positive character. She is a superhero because it's the right thing to do. Like, sort of the big phrase to come out of her first few issues. Good is not a thing you are; it is a thing you do, which is just an incredible mission statement. Um, and kind of a lot different from hell of a lot different from power and responsibility. So she's just incredible. One of the absolute best characters out there. I highly recommend reading the entire run by G. Willow Wilson. Saladin Ahmed's recent run, he was trying a little too hard to hit some classic Spider-Man beats, so it didn't really work for me. Um, and I mean, she's a character who's going to be around for a while. I am very wary of the upcoming Disney Plus series TV show because they changed her powers, and I'm not sure how much I trust them to Like they changed her powers. They've done some whitewashing of some of her supporting cast. Uh, I will say, Iman Vellani, she looks amazing. She looks like she'll be an absolutely incredible Kamala Khan. I am really excited for her, but yeah, I've got some definite concerns about the show. But hey, we got a little bit of time before we get to that, and I'll talk about that show once it airs. Uh, so moving on, America Chavez. She's someone that you're going to see in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. She's one of the characters. She's going to be debuting in that movie. In the comics, she's had a couple of bad runs lately. I will say that. Her most recent mini was retconned her in a way that didn't really work for me. Um, and, was the kind of retcon that I don't really like. It wasn't additive. It was just a complete change of everything we understood about her in a way that didn't really add anything. Um, but America Chavez in the Gillen McKelvey run of Young Avengers. She was so good there. She was just such a great character, and she's still got immense potential if she can get another writer who gets her voice right. Um, I hate to say it, but the writers who've gotten her voice best have been Kieran Gillen and Al Ewing, both white British dudes. So I'm not sure why they are so much better at her than uh, other writers, but yeah, I mean, she's just like this powerhouse. She's young, but she knows a lot more than her age would suggest. She's been through a lot. The fact that she can travel the multiverse and has been traveling the multiverse since she was a kid, it makes her really interesting. And she's someone else I'm excited to see in the MCU. Um, Forgetting the actor's name, Jimena or something like that. Whatever. Yeah, I'm interested to see that actor's take on the character, and getting closer and closer to Young Avengers. Whoop. Moving on, Monica Rambeau. If you saw Captain Marvel, the Captain Marvel movie, she was the young girl in there. Um, Carolyn Maria's daughter. And of course, if you watched WandaVision, Monica was a big part of that show. And in the comics, Monica's incredible. Monica's just such a great character in the comics. Um, she debuted as Captain Marvel. The way she got the Captain Marvel name was painfully contrived. Like, it was just lazy writing that was done to get to assign the name to her. Um, but she lived up to it. She was a fantastic Captain Marvel. And yeah, so she was created by Roger Stern, um, legendary Avengers writer. She was one of the most important characters in his Avengers run, maybe even the star. I would go so far as to say that Monica Rambeau was the main character of his Avengers run. She was very much his writer's pet. which does happen, and sometimes that can be a bad thing. But she was so good, she was the most powerful member of the team. Just hugely versatile power set, and she started off a little bit overwhelmed, but watching her grow, watching her confidence grow, and watching her grow into the leader of the Avengers, it made for a really compelling story, and she's been an incredible character ever since. She's done, anytime she shows up, she's boss. She's any book she appears in, she's one of the best characters in it. Um, Again, writer Al Ewing has a ton of love for her and has done so much with her in recent years. Um, but yeah, I feel like she's one of those characters that pretty much any Avengers fan loves. Speaking of Avengers, Hank Pym. So, Hank Pym is not a popular character. I mean, yeah, he's been around since the 60s. He's one of the original Avengers. Um, he's been around for a long time. He's fairly controversial. He's had a lot of bad stories, unfortunately. But he's had a lot of really compelling stories. Uh, he's canonically bipolar or borderline personality, I think is what it's called now. So he's someone who has a history of making really bad decisions because he's not mentally healthy, and he has a history of not really taking care of his mental health, uh, which, you know, I find very relatable. I find that way more relatable than Tony Stark's alcoholism or anything about Thor or Bucky or any of the other major Avengers. You know, the fact that he does have a legitimate mental health issue makes him someone I relate to, and it does allow for some really interesting stories and some really interesting character exploration. Speaking of Hank, I also really like the Wasps, both of them. Janet Van Dyne, Hank's ex-wife, and Nadia Van Dyne, Hank's daughter. Uh, Jan is just a boss. Like, she really is. Again, her growth from being this kind of ditzy heiress, ditzy rich girl, um, to, again, leader of the Avengers, and she's continued to grow since then as well. It's a really compelling character arc she's had. And she's still a really compelling character. And then Nadia, her adopted daughter. Hank's biological daughter and Janet's adopted daughter. She's a little ball of sunshine. Uh, One of the most positive superheroes ever. But also, again, borderline personality. She's bipolar, manic depressive. Uh, and that made for one hell of a story in the Unstoppable Wasps series. Also, again, Nadia, fantastic supporting cast. The her friends in the research group that she founded, that she and Janet founded. Um, and the relationship between Janet and Nadia is just so sweet and heartwarming. It's I love the two of them. Um, I really want to see more of the two of them together. Um, Squirrel Girl, love Squirrel Girl. Again, very positive. She's unbeatable, and she's unbeatable because she is very clever and very empathetic. She cares. She tries to talk to people, tries to get to understand where the villains are coming from, and tries her best to find non-evil solutions for what they're looking for. Her friendship with Craven was just wonderful. Craven the Hunter. Uh, they were good friends. Um, Also, Squirrel Girl. Powers of both squirrel and girl. Great powers. And always has a ton of squirrels around her, so it means that her fights tend to be adorable. Because squirrels are adorable. I like Deadpool depending on the writer. He's more than most characters. Deadpool is a character where my enjoyment depends very, very heavily on the writer. Because a lot of writers, I feel, don't really get the character. There's always too much. There's a lot of times where the focus is on making him funny. Usually with, like, weirdly random crap, and it's like, um, but Deadpool is a tragic character. Um, so I like when writers grasp more the tragedy than the comedy. Um, so yeah, Deadpool sometimes. Kate Bishop almost always. Kate Bishop is another character who's just really fun, and Kate Bishop is at her best when she's kind of just in over her head, an absolute train wreck who just keeps going. Um, doesn't have the good sense to step back. She's such a great young hero. She's just overconfident, um, often overly enthusiastic, uh, rushes in without thinking things through, uh, lets her mouth run away with her, and yet, she still saves the day. She'll end up covered in band-aids and with frozen peas on her head by the end, but she does it. Yeah, Kate Bishop is just really fun. And her friendship with Clint Barton, is also great. They always make for a fun pair. Uh, so the character that is probably fewest people here are going to be familiar with, Singularity. She was in the series A-Force. She is a living universe who took the form of a young, adorable woman. She's got a great visual design because she's stars. She's like it's just she's a universe, so it's just stars and stuff like that. She looks like she looks like staring into space, which is just always a really cool design. Um, and she's just so bubbly and happy. Uh, there is potential with her to actually explore, um, for her to be non-binary. I believe the original intention was for her to be non-binary. She just took female form because of she was found by women. Um, Sadly, that's never really been explored um, because it's she just hasn't really been picked up by any other writers yet. It's a shame because she's got a ton of potential. She's really interesting, and I really want to see more of her. Elsa Bloodstone. She's She's an angry British woman who hunts monsters. She's great. So much profanity. She's just every other word out of her mouth is censored. So she's just really, really fun. The Robbie Reyes version of Ghost Rider. I haven't been happy with with what Jason Aaron's done with Ghost Rider on Avengers. It just doesn't work for me. But his Robbie's original series was really good. Um, a lot of it comes down to him just being an LA boy trying to take care of his disabled brother. Um, it's losing his not having Gabe around him really makes him less compelling. He's at his most interesting uh, in his relationship with his brother. So that's sort of my biggest problem, I think, with how Jason Aaron is handling Robbie Reyes in Avengers. Uh, She Hulk, great character. Uh, she was breaking the fourth wall long before Deadpool existed. Um, there's a lot of negative things to be said about John Byrne, but man was always a fantastic artist, and his writing was usually really good. And he did write a really fun book when he was doing Sensational She-Hulk back in the 80s, and other writers and artists who sort of took over the book after him were really good as well. Um, a lot of the appeal was just the fourth wall breaking. There was a lot of poking fun at comic books. Um, Comic book tropes. Uh, she had a friend in that book who was an old uh, 1940s superheroine, the Blonde Phantom, World War II heroine, the Blonde Phantom, who joined the book so she could be de-aged, basically, so she could be younger again and keep on living, because the 80s, old people don't exist in comic books, you know? So, like, that was just a funny thing. There'd be times where she'd, like, turn the page, where, she'd be, like, sort of marching across the page um, to get to another panel. Um, Lots of references to lots of references to various comic book tropes and stuff like that. So it's a really fun book, and even outside of that, She-Hulk is just almost always fun. Um, she did have a more dramatic turn recently, and honestly, I'll be honest, I liked Mariko Tamaki's more serious She-Hulk series. I thought it was an interesting change of pace for the character. And, I mean, it was a good exploration of grief and PTSD. So there's... It was also just a well-written book. And great art as well. Great art. But, her new solo just launched today. Written by Rambeau Rowell. And covers by the incredible Jan Bartel. And I haven't read the first issue yet, but looks exciting. I am very interested in that. I look forward to reading it, because it does look like it's back to her being fun again. Comedic. Speaking of She-Hulk, her best friend, Hellcat, great character. Wild history. She started off as a character in romance comics. Yeah. Then she joined the supporting cast of a solo story about the Beast, Hank McCoy from the X-Men. Beast from the X-Men. He had a solo series at one point where he came across Patsy Walker, and she sort of ended up as in part of his circle, which led to her going on an adventure with the Avengers, where she found a superhero costume and became Hellcat, and then she was taken to space to be trained to train her psychic abilities. She married the son of Satan, which eventually resulted in her committing suicide, and then she was later brought back from the dead. And yeah, so quite a history. But she's still just but she still tries very hard to always be the happy-go-lucky Hellcat. And it does make her really good to read. Really, really fun whenever she shows up. Also, there was a comic mini where she called dibs on punching a clone of Oppenheimer. I love superhero comics. Crystal of the Inhumans. One of the very few, probably the only member of the Inhuman royal family that I genuinely like. Because the Inhumans, the classic Inhumans are jerks. They are classist dicks with a caste system, a frigging slave race that it took supervillain to force them to free. Um, but Crystal was always cool. Crystal was the only one who ever actually seemed to care about the state of the alpha primitives, the slave race that I mentioned. She actually did seem to care. Like, she actually cared about them. She was a good person. And, like, a Disney princess with the power to throw fireballs. And, she's had an interesting history. The biggest problem Crystal has always had is so often her stories revolve around her romantic relationships. Yeah, there was a Human Torch, there was Quicksilver, there was Black Knight in the 90s. It was always just this relationship drama, romantic drama, and it's like, come on. She has had other stories, though. Uh, and in recent years, even her relationship drama stories have been a little bit more interesting. Um, and yeah, she's gone to grow up to be more confident, to be a leader. Um, Also, she cut her hair short, and it looked really cute. I liked her with short hair. It was just a really cute cut. Cloak and Dagger, awesome characters, awesome pairing. Their stories were really interesting. Like, they had a really good run. Um, I'd like to see them get another run. They deserve it because they're interesting characters. They they've traditionally been sort of war on drugs characters. Um, but it wouldn't take much to just shift a little bit to be more just commentary on the justice system, on policing and things like that. Uh, Obviously, protecting runaway kids is always going to be their biggest priority, and that should be what their books focus on the most. Um, but yeah, I think there's room to do some more interesting stuff with them as well. And last character I'll mention, Night Thrasher, who debuted as actually debuted as already kind of a cliche. So honestly, the quick and incredibly accurate description of Night Thrasher is Black Batman with a skateboard. Yes, a skateboard. Which brings up something really funny about him. So, Dwayne McDuffie, an absolute legend, one of the greatest creators in comics history, once wrote a joking comic pitch called Teenage Mutant Negro Thrashers, because right around the same time, there was a debut of Rocket Racer, a black dude on a skateboard, followed very soon after by Night Thrasher, a black dude on a skateboard. And those two represented a surprisingly large portion of the black characters appearing in comics, in Marvel Comics at that time. So he put together a pitch for a satirical pitch for a team of black guys on skateboards, and it's funny. It was really funny. It's worth looking it up, because it was a really funny idea, and also just read Dwayne McDuffie comics. They were so good. He was so good. But anyway, Night Thrasher did sort of was more interesting than that. Luckily, Fabian Nicieza, one of Marvel's best writers in the '90s, like hands down. Fabian Nicieza was incredible. He was such a good writer in the '90s. I haven't really read much of his stuff in the past 20 years, honestly, that I can think of. Uh, I've read his, occasional things he's written since then, and they've been good. But '90s especially, he was doing some incredible work. Some really progressive stuff for the time. He wrote a series called Nomad that had an issue about drag queens that was deeply empathetic to them and treated them as valid people, which in the 90s, in Marvel Comics in the 90s, not common. But yeah, Nicieza used Night Thrasher as one of the main characters in New Warriors, which was also a really smart book. Nicieza worked with him. Use of the Mad Thinker was incredible. Nicieza wrote the most compelling version of the Mad Thinker I've ever seen, hands down, not even a question. The most interesting version of the Mad Thinker ever. The New Warriors as a whole was a more socially conscious superhero title. It did deal more with complicated social issues. He wasn't able to get any gay people in the book, sadly. I'm not sure if he ever actually tried to have any of the characters come out as gay or anything like that, but definitely for a white guy writing about racial issues in a comic in the '90s, Nicieza did better than most. Did better than Claremont did in the 2000s. And Night Thrasher was a really compelling character there. He was, like I said, Black Batman. An orphan who inherited tons of money. But he was still black. And that was still, it was still clear that, he may be rich, but he knew he was still black. And he knew that he would still be perceived as black. And, he was smart. He was kind of manipulative. He was kind of a jerk sometimes. He helped the character discover that they still had their powers by dropping him off a roof. Yeah. Yeah, he's that kind of character. He's really smart. And even the skateboard, he didn't really use it that often, realistically. But it was... I think it might have been adamantium, so it was bulletproof and everything. But yeah, he was just a really interesting, compelling character. He was really cool. which often got overlooked on account of him being on account of the fact that he had a skateboard, which is weird in a superhero comic. But hey, Iron Man used to have roller skates. Not a joke. He had roller skates built into his boots. Yeah. Yeah, just imagine Iron Man zipping around on roller skates. And tell me that's ridiculous, and tell me that's less ridiculous than a guy with a bulletproof skateboard. Okay, bulletproof skateboard still pretty ridiculous, but he made it work, and really want to see more Night Thrasher. He's now that he's back from the dead, as of the past few years. I'd love to see him end up in a book again. I felt like there might have been the possibility of him getting a solo not too long ago. Um, but I guess they're probably just. But I guess probably editorial just didn't think there was going to be enough interest in it for it to sell. Would be my guess. But he's a cool character, and he deserves a chance to show again why he is cool and more interesting than just black guy on a skateboard makes some sound. But yeah, so those are just a bunch of my some of my favorite non-mutant Marvel superheroes, ones who are unaffiliated with the X-Men. And I think that's about all I've got for tonight. So, thanks for watching, and have a nice night.